Hello, and welcome to day 3 of Secrets to Finding Freedom from Diabetes. I hope you all have been able to figure out how many calories you do require each day for your activity level and your goals. But if you do need any help, feel free to contact me anytime. Now let's continue with day 3, which we're going to cover all of the key components of fitness. So the components of fitness, there are quite a few. There's muscular strength, muscular endurance, power, cardiovascular endurance, flexibility, and agility. And depending on the source, there's even a couple more, but we're going to focus on these for right now. These are the main components that you'd want to develop in any kind of fitness program. And some of the benefits of a fitness program is basically it's going to keep you physiologically young. The aging process of losing muscle does not have to happen. You can have much more muscle in your 70s and 80s than you did in your 20s. Consistent training over a long period of time is going to help you look, feel, and stay younger. It helps change your shape and the hardness and the feel of the muscles. And a main thing is it increases your metabolism. The biggest thing I would say as a person ages is going to be it helps prevent injuries and helps aid in balance. And when you're doing a fitness program, again, the key point to remember is anything is better than nothing. So in simple terms, muscular strength is how much you can lift one time. Muscular endurance is how many times you can lift something. Power has a time component to it, so it's how quickly you can move something. Cardiovascular endurance is basically how long you can perform an activity, and agility is how quickly you can change directions and move. Now, talking about muscular strength and muscular endurance, this is where repetitions come in. So if we're talking about pure strength, 1 to 3 repetitions is considered pure strength. To get muscular endurance, you need to be doing a lift or movement 25 or more times. And right in the middle of the strength and endurance continuum is about 12 to 15 repetitions. And this is a good starting point for any new program. It builds a combination of strength and endurance. A gym is great if you have access to one, but you don't have to go to a gym to make great results. No special equipment is needed. There's many different options for equipment, from free weights, machines, tubing. There's all sorts of surgical tubing out there that's a very cheap way to get a full pulley system in your home. There's equipment such as a TRX, which are straps that can hook over a door or anchor to a post, and you can do a full body workout with that. Each one has its strengths and weaknesses, and the main thing that you need to consider is that whatever you do, you want to be doing it consistently. So to get results, consistency is the key. Now, I've come up with 5 simple exercises as an example to show you how easy it can be to work out at home. So I'm going to post these in the chat box, or the link for this. And again, always feel free to let me know any questions that you might have. So how does this all work with helping control blood sugar? Well, exercise and activity and consistently moving opens up your cells to be receptive to insulin. So it does not take as much insulin to transport the carbohydrate into the cell. That's the key for training and activity. Now, there's what we call fit principles that you will work with to manipulate the programs, any programs, whether it's for cardiovascular, strength, or endurance. And what this stands for is frequency, intensity, and time, or duration. And a key to keep in mind when you're dealing with this is the workout is only as good as your recovery. So if you're working out 4 times per week, but you're not eating correctly or sleeping correctly, or you have a high stress level and you're not able to recover from it, 2 times per week is going to go much further, and you're going to get much better results by doing 2 times a week versus 4. So the frequency, you have to remember that your body works as a whole. So there's a lot of crossovers with movement. So when you're doing back, you're involving shoulders and arms also. So you have to take that into account for the recovery and the frequency of how often you're actually working each muscle. We're going to go over guidelines a little bit later for cardiovascular, so I'll get into that more. The intensity, this has to do with how hard you're pushing through the exercise. So ideally, after a muscle is warmed up, and there's a general warm-up and a specific warm-up. So a general warm-up is where you elevate your heart rate to over 100 and you start breaking a sweat. A specific warm-up is doing a particular movement lightly to get the muscles used to that range of motion and that movement. So once your muscles have warmed up, what we're looking for is going to momentary muscular failure, whereby the last set that you're doing, you can't complete the last repetition in good technique. Now, that's a very high intensity. So when the intensity is high, the frequency needs to be less. It takes longer to recover. So there's 2 options that you can work with here. You can either go high intensity and lower frequency, or higher volume and lower intensity. And this changes throughout the year, which we'll get into a little bit with a fundamental we call cycling. Now, the duration, 45 minutes is good for a resistance program. It doesn't have to be 45 minutes. It could be broken up into segments of 5 minutes, but probably a minimum you're looking at is about 20 minutes. 45 is good for a well-conditioned person who has a lot of experience with the program. 20 minutes is going to be much better for a beginner. And what you're looking at for your total exercise program for the day is 1.5 hours. So if you're doing 45 minutes of resistance exercise, you would do 45 minutes of cardiovascular to maximize the 1.5 hours. And that's just a maximum. It does not have to be that every day, but you don't want to do 60 minutes of resistance training and 60 minutes of cardiovascular conditioning, because studies have found that at about that 90-minute mark, testosterone levels start to decrease, and that affects your recovery. So again, this is going to get into a cycling principle, what we'll get to in a little bit, but you can't push hard on all of the fitness parameters at once. You need to break them up into phases. So fundamental number 1 is going to be the recovery of muscles. Now, large muscles, which are your legs, back, and chest, take longer to recover than small muscles, which are your shoulders, arms, and calves and abs. This has a lot to do with fiber type, but to not get into too much detail, large muscles require about 48 to 96 hours to recover. Smaller muscles require 24 to 48 hours to recover. So that means that large muscle groups should be worked less often and small more often. Now, the consideration here is the overlap of the muscles, as I mentioned before. So in back movements, your shoulders and biceps are worked. In chest movements, your shoulders and triceps are worked. So how you put the different exercises together is very important to allow for the proper recovery. An example of this for a 3-day split would be on day 1, you do back and chest. And on day 2, you do legs and shoulders. Usually there's going to be a 48-hour break in between that. So let's say it's going to be a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So back and chest, you're hitting on Monday. You've hit your shoulders and arms indirectly with these exercises. Now you're waiting 48 hours, which should allow recovery for the small muscle groups, but it might not for the large ones. So you're doing a different large muscle group, which is legs, on Wednesday, and then you're hitting the small muscle groups again, which is your shoulders, and indirectly arms, or work with shoulder exercises. Then on day 3, which would be Friday, you're doing a light back and chest, which doesn't mean easy, it means lower volume. So instead of 9 sets, say for back, you're doing 3 sets or something like that. And then you're doing arms directly. So on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you've hit shoulders and arms directly or indirectly. On Monday, you've hit your back and chest, and then 96 hours later on Friday, you've hit your back and chest again. So we're meeting the recovery criteria. Abdominals, I like to put in as a cool down at the end of each day. So you would do that Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and meet the criteria for that recovery. And if you've noticed on this split, you're only working legs 1 time per week. And according to the science behind it, you should be hitting your legs every 48 to 96 hours. The reason I only put in legs 1 time in this example, and this goes with calves also, is because you would be doing cardiovascular exercise, which affects the legs greatly and affects the recovery. So I found that this type of split works really well for a 3-day. For 2 days and 4 days, it's the same principles, but it would look a little bit different. The next fundamental is the split. So that's what I just went over with a 3-day split, a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. A 2-day split, you would need to do a full body workout each time. Typically, you'd want to do like a Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, Wednesday, Saturday, something like that. But the first workout might emphasize back and chest and say arms, and the next workout would emphasize legs, shoulders, calves, and abdominals. You would work each muscle group each day, but you'd put an emphasis on a different area. And a 4-day split, what would work well is back and chest on Monday, legs and shoulders on Tuesday, you're taking Wednesday off. You're doing that light back and chest and direct arm work on Thursday, and then a light leg and shoulders on Friday. And what I would do with the legs on the heavy leg workout day, you'd be using movements that involve the entire lower body, your thighs, quadriceps, the hamstrings, the back of the thigh, your glutes or butt, those types of movements. And then on the Friday, you'd be working with movements that work in a different plane. So you'd be working, instead of say up and down type movements, you'd be working sideways movements. So it's a little bit different stimulus and still allows for the recovery. The next fundamental is the intensity versus the volume. So by definition, intensity has to do with work divided by time. So the volume, the total volume for your workout is your reps times your sets times your weight. The longer it takes you to do something, the lower the intensity by definition. And typically, I go with a higher intensity model versus a higher volume model. The exception would be for a sport or activity where you need a lot more endurance and volume to train for a particular activity. But just for general conditioning, a higher intensity, lower volume works very well. Now, what you're looking at with muscular threshold, there's a certain level that your body's used to. So if you don't ask it to do more than what it's accustomed to, there's no reason for it to recover and come back stronger. So this has to do with the muscular threshold. If you take a look at this slide, the curved lines represent a set and the fatigue of the muscles. The horizontal line represents your muscular threshold, where your body is used to being. So on the top of the slide, you can see the first curved line represents the first set, and you're resting 30 seconds in between sets. Then you do the second set, and that line represents where you would be going to momentary muscular failure. Then you rest again 30 seconds, and then you push over what your body's able to do currently. So you'd go to, if you were shooting for 12 reps, you might only make 8. Now you've asked your body to do more than what it's accustomed to, and it will come back and recover stronger. So this is an intensity model where you're working 3 sets and only resting 30 seconds between sets. Down at the bottom as an example was say 90 seconds rest between sets, so that you can see that each set with more rest in between the muscle's not getting fatigued as quickly, and you're not getting to your muscular threshold as quickly. So even by the fourth set, you haven't reached your muscular threshold. In that example, with 90 seconds, it would take 5 sets. So that's a higher volume model, more rest versus a higher intensity model. And again, for most people, the higher intensity model is going to be your best bet. So cycling has to do, it's taken from a sports principle called periodization. You can't increase all of your components of fitness at once. So you need to focus on, say, muscular endurance in one cycle and then muscular strength in another cycle. There's no magic to any numbers out there, but what I found works well is a cycle lasts about 10 weeks. That's plenty to allow for progress and short enough not to overtrain or overtax any one component. You vary the frequency, intensity, and time during these different cycles. Change up the exercises. When you're focusing on cardiovascular endurance, you want to maintain your muscular strength. So you can't try and increase your strength and cardiovascular condition at the same time. Or I should say you can, but if you do, you're going to get into an overtrained state much easier, which is going to lead to injury, and you're usually going to, your immune system will be compromised and you're going to be getting sick more often. So let's go over the principles behind cardiovascular training. The benefits you'll find from doing cardiovascular training is an overall wellness, better energy, increased muscle tone, biggest thing, increased metabolic rate. So you'll be able to burn more calories 24 hours of the day. So that will lead to greater fat loss. And you're going to strengthen the skeletal system and help prevent osteoporosis and those types of conditions. And the biggest one most people like is decreasing their body fat. It can also help reduce your appetite, help with other health risks, and help you sleep better at night. So it does have a huge, tremendous benefit. And you can combine cardiovascular training in your resistance training with supersets, circuits where you're doing exercises back to back versus just doing things like walking or running or a particular type of cardiovascular equipment called an elliptical machine, something like that. So there's a lot of variable or ways to get cardiovascular conditioning and keep the time frame that you have to commit to under control. So basically, your cardiovascular system is made up of your heart, lungs, the blood, and the blood vessels. And aerobic exercise takes air in through the lungs, gets it to the blood, and then gets it to the muscles. Now, the measure of what kind of condition your cardiovascular system is in has to do with VO2 max. And all you need to know is that this is how much oxygen your body can take in and utilize. And utilize is the key. So that's what happens with cardiovascular conditioning. It's not a matter of how much oxygen you can breathe in, it's how much oxygen your body can utilize. And the best or the better condition you're in, the more oxygen your body will be able to utilize. So any activity will seem easier because your body is able to process the oxygen, and you're going to keep your heart rate down at a lower level for a given activity. These are ACSM guidelines, American College of Sports Medicine for cardiovascular conditioning. So you want to be doing cardiovascular conditioning 3 to 6 times per week. You always want to have at least one full day off to recover, unless you're trying to peak for a special event, which the longest you'd want to train every day would be probably about 3 months. Otherwise, 3 to 6 times per week. Now, when you're starting off with a cardiovascular exercise, the initial 5 minutes is getting the warm up, increasing the circulation, increasing your core temperature. And the next 5 to 20 minutes is where you transition from anaerobic to aerobic. So anaerobic is your body working without oxygen. And this is the burn you feel in the muscles. So when you start an activity and a muscle starts to burn, that's because your body isn't able to take in and utilize oxygen enough to make the energy, and lactic acid builds up in the muscles. If you keep doing it at a low enough intensity, after say 7, 8, 10, 15 minutes, that burn starts to go away and you'll start to feel it like it's a lot easier. That's where cardiovascular condition makes a difference. So if for a given activity, you have two people, one with poor cardiovascular condition and one with good cardiovascular condition, the person with poor conditioning is going to feel a burn in the muscles and have to stop much sooner than the person who's conditioned. And you'll get into your aerobic pathways much quicker. So somebody who's training for cardiovascular conditioning will get into their aerobic pathways maybe at the 6, 7, 8 minute mark, where somebody who's deconditioned might take them 20 to 25 minutes. Now, 60 minutes would be the maximum that you would want to do at any one time. And you want to try and involve large muscle groups when you're training for cardiovascular conditioning, but 20 minutes is a minimum. So if you want to get your heart and lungs in better condition, you need to do 20 consecutive minutes. You might not be able to start off with that. So you could do, say, 4 bouts of 5 minutes a day and build up to the 20 minutes, but you need to get that 20 minutes in for cardiovascular conditioning. And there's a couple different ways of measuring the intensity. So maximum heart rate is 220 minus your age. And to that number, you're taking 60 to 85% of that, and that is your target heart rate. So you need to be at least 60% of your maximum heart rate to get cardiovascular benefits. But when you get over that 85%, you're getting into an anaerobic threshold portion. The better way, or the best way to allow for recovery when you're doing this, is to go by perceived exertion. And using a simple scale of 1 to 10, which is the new rating of perceived exertion, you should be at a 6 to 8 feeling. So 10 would be all out, where you feel like you can't do anymore, you're just going to pass out, fall down. 1 is going to be very easy. 6 to 8 is going to be that somewhat hard. So it should push you. You feel like you're working, you're breathing hard, but you could keep going with it and it's not going to exhaust you. When you're tired, whether it's from lack of sleep, a longer period of time for working out, so say you've been doing it for 2 weeks, you wake up really tired one morning, whatever it might be, your resting heart rate is going to be higher and everything you do is going to feel harder for the day. So it actually means that you need to have more recovery. So if you do an activity one time and you think it's a 6, and then the next time you do it, and the same activity, everything else is the same, it feels more like an 8 or even a 9, that's a signal that your body needs more recovery. So it would be better to take a day or 2 off, allow for the recovery, and then come back and pick it up again. Another really key important to start as soon as possible is flexibility. And flexibility training does need to be done every day to get good results. Otherwise, if you try and stretch one day and not the other, you're going to gain flexibility and then lose it, and you keep going back and forth. So this is something that does need to be done every day. You don't want to be stretching a cold muscle. So a good way to do this is to use flexibility training as a cool down at the end of a workout. Or if you do it first thing in the morning, make sure you're moving around a little bit first so the muscles are ready for it. Otherwise, you could end up straining a muscle because its defense mechanism, if it feels like it's getting stretched too hard, is to contract and spasm. One other thing, stretching is not a good warm-up. It relaxes the muscles. So I'm talking about static stretching, where you're actually holding the stretch for 20 to 30 seconds. There's something called dynamic stretching, where you're actually stretching the muscle by doing a movement. And that would be a better warm-up, getting your body prepared for movement. And there's one other thing to consider. as far as flexibility. It's not just about muscle stretching, but there's fascia that covers your muscles, and foam rollers and massage help keep the fascia flexible so that you don't get adhesions and tight knots in the muscles, and helps allow for the muscles to go through their full range of motion. So stretching is very critical, and there's three main types. There's ballistic, static, and something called PNF, which is proprio-neuromuscular facilitation. Now, static stretching is the easiest and the safest way to go. This is where you would go into a stretched position, feel a slight pull on the muscle, hold it for about 15 to 20 seconds. Hopefully you'll feel the muscle relax a little bit. Then you go a little bit further and hold maybe for another 15 to 20 seconds, but there's no movement. You're holding the stretch. With ballistic stretching, this is more of a bouncing type movement. And what happens is there's receptors in the muscles that sense the tension and the stretch of a muscle. And if the muscles or these receptors think that a muscle is getting pulled too far or too quickly, its defense is to contract. And this is where you end up with a spasmed and a knotted muscle. So that's much easier with ballistic stretching. It does have its place for certain sports and activities that you might need to do, but static stretching is the safest. And the stretching that will get you the furthest is PNF stretching, proprio-neuromuscular facilitation. There's different forms of this, but the easiest way is when you get into a stretched position, you feel the pull in the muscle, you try and contract the muscle, and this tricks those receptors, because if a muscle is contracted, it doesn't think that it's going to be stretched. So you hold that contraction for about 6 seconds, and then you relax, and your limb will move into a greater range of motion almost automatically. Hold that for about 10 seconds. You do another contraction, go back and forth about 3 times. This is a great way to increase your flexibility if you are very, very tight and need a way to improve the flexibility quicker. So what's next? We have our Conquer Diabetes program. Now, I know I've thrown a lot of information out at you with the nutrition yesterday and the training today. There's a lot more to cover, and I'd be glad to go over that with anybody who has questions. But if you need help with this and you'd like somebody to take care of all this for you and design the correct program, set up your calorie levels and such, that's what the Conquer Diabetes program is about. And it's specifically for managing blood sugar and diabetes. So what you would get is a customized 12-week nutrition and fitness program. It's an educational course, so it takes you through all of this information, and we followed the American Diabetes Association guidelines for the information and the instruction. You'll get customized menu plans, you get video demonstrations of exercises. It comes with key supplements for managing blood sugar and a home workout fitness tools. So whatever it might need, if you need a foam roller or surgical tubing, it's completely customized, but we get the equipment that you need. And then for support and motivation, you get a weekly virtual meeting via Zoom, open for question and answers. There's a Facebook group for support and motivation. And after the 12-week educational program, we still continue to work with you on the fitness and nutrition to go through follow-up programs and make sure that you're reaching your goals safely. So since you've attended this webinar, we are offering our course at a 50% discount. I'm going to put the purchase link and our contact information into the chat box. If you have any interest, take a look at it. You can contact me if you have any questions. And hopefully we will be able to work together and help you conquer your diabetes. I really appreciate you attending the webinar. And again, please feel free to contact me anytime with questions. Have a great evening. Thank you. Bye.